All right, so this baby is cooked and she is cooled. You can see her beginning hairline and her beginning brows are very faint. We're going to work on that today, or on this episode of her eyebrow hairdoing video. This is a new color of paint that I'm pulling out that will more closely match her hairline. This is a dark brown mixed with black. I'm going to mix it and stir it. Again, I'm going to come back to my tiny hairbrush. Gotta try to see if I can get my hands up and comfortable enough so that you can see and I can have it in the spot where I need it. Okay. That is what we don't want. Little dark smudges on your fingers, so be careful of the paint jars. Before I carry on with this one, I'm actually going to do a quick tidy so I don't smag on my doll. This is the downside of keeping jars like this, because if they ever get tipped over and you use the paint in the lids like I do for a palette, it does boogery up the top of the jar lid, making it less clean than one might want. Okay, so here we go again. I'm going to add this darker. This might look like it's going on way too dark, but when the hair is actually on, it's going to be the right thickness. This is probably a little darker than this baby could get away with because she is so young. So there's a dark spot right there that it just went on. I want to get that off because it's a little too dark. This is her hairline, not her eyebrow. These little fuzzy baby hairs will fade up into her head and her actual hairline. I really hope you guys can see this clearly. It's hard to get this baby in the right spot. Tiny little strokes. You can see on my paintbrush that there's a glob of paint getting ready to come down. Pay attention to your paintbrush. You don't want those to land on the head. This little lady is going to have really dark hair. Well, maybe not really, really dark hair, but darker than the stuff that she started with, which was a kind of a dirty blonde. And I'm doing that so that I can hide her hairline. These little hairs will help blend in the forehead hairs from where she is getting hair rooted versus where it fades off into the painted hair of her actual forehead. And now I'm gonna work on her top of her hairline. These little hairs will come down on her forehead, kind of at a side angle, and fade from this side of her head over to her right over to her left. I'm not worried about it too much and the actual back here where it's pokey being too detailed, because that's where the hair will be more visible and it'll cover that up. I just want it to be visible, and then these fine wispies on the forehead that I can't really root this fine. This hair will come from the behind the ear and sweep forward over the front of the ear. And then it'll sweep behind her ear. And on this temple, it's going to start changing directions and going from one side to the other. And we want to keep this same hairline. So this side I'm going to come from down here and start working my way up towards that spot so I can make that curve natural so it doesn't cut off funny. Every part of reborning is an art all by itself. You can be a good hair rooter and be dreadful at painting, and it kind of ruins the whole effect. You could be good at painting but can't really root, and then it ruins the whole effect. So you have to really focus on practicing every part of it in order to perfect your own skills and talents. Painting hair is its own skill all by itself. So it's, people can paint but can't root, and people can root but can't paint. So there's tons of individual skills that you have to be able to practice if you want to get really good at it. All right, so this eyebrow is done with this layer for now. I'll come back and make them more even. And we got the basic hairline in, and I'm going to come over and catch this eyebrow up, making sure I don't have any paint on me that I can smear on the head while I balance my paintbrush. Okay, so you can see my eyebrows aren't exactly even, so now I'm going to work on trying to even them out and make them look similar to each other. This one comes in a little farther, so I'm going to try to get this one in a little bit more. And these are going to be some of those little baby hairs that come down and meet the eyebrow. The first paint off your brush is usually thicker, so in these areas I don't want the first stroke to be the thickest, so I'm going to wipe off those first few strokes in other layers. And then come back to these little baby hairs. With a tiny bit of the thinner paint. Again, these first few are going to be thicker. This baby I want to look very newborn as far as her hairline goes. I want her to have kind of a lot of that hair on the forehead rather than the older baby look where it's kind of starting to fuzzy off and you can't really see it. And hair on the forehead has hair patterns just like it does on the head. So you have to be careful of how you put your hair patterns on. What I'm going to do for this one with my, here I'll grab a tiny little tool that doesn't have paint on it, my crochet hook. My hair pattern's going to come forward from right here. Trying to get this in a way you can see. So from here, my hair comes forward from the back and then it swoops that way. So I'm going to keep this pattern up until the eyebrows. And then from there, I'm going to bring that pattern down this direction where it kind of already is. So these tiny little baby hairs will be coming in at a little bit of an angle. Again, the first strokes are usually the thickest and darkest. And I want those to be where it needs to be, a little thicker and darker. Okay, hopefully you saw that. Okay, so from there, I'm going to start swooshing it off to the side going this way. Okay, so hopefully you can kind of see that. Assign tiny fuzzy hairs on each side and across the forehead. I'm going to emphasize this brow on this side a little bit more. See out here, it's you can see that it's brow, and over here it's not as dark and thick. So I'm going to come add a little bit more just to this area of the brow. And then we have a little bit over here going down. Got one little hair sticking out of the head still. I don't know how I missed that for all these layers. I'm going to come down on this side a little bit and actually add some of these little tiny baby facial hairs back in. They come up on the cheek and under the eye. A lot of the times you see this done with white, fuzzy, soft baby hairs. And that's fine for the light-haired babies, but the dark-haired babies has it kind of a light reddish-brown color all over their little selves. Nice, tiny, even, light strokes to pull these off. And this hair is going to come pull forward over the ear and swoop down where it meets in front of the ear. And then there'll be some that carry it from the top of the pointy part of the ear, where if it was an elf, that's where the point would go. It will swoop there to the back. Okay, so that's my basic hairline. I'm going to fill it in a little bit just to make it even on both sides. Hair really finishes off your doll. You can have the most beautiful kit, but if it's done bald, unless it's done with some extra special care, bald babies don't really look as finished without some extra fuzzy final details like the final baby fuzz and stuff like that as the babies that have the effort put into hair. So really make an effort if you're a beginner on practicing hair. If you are new to this, buy yourself a head from Bountiful Baby where they're less expensive and practice hair patterns and wipe it off, and practice hair patterns and wipe it off until you get really good. Find yourself some good paint brushes and trim them down until you like how the paint is coming off of them. All right, now I'm going to take this whole hair design and find my swirl. And I'm not going to put all the paint on the top of this head. I'm just going to bring it back to the part where I know where my swirl is so I can root the hair on this head with my swirl in mind so I can follow it. So I'm going to start the hair in a swirl, probably right about here. So that'll be the inside of my swirl right there. So all of this hair will be coming out of the head going this way, which means all of the head hair up here will be coming into the swirl accordingly. And it'll branch off from there and go down and follow the hair patterns. Come forward, it'll come back. Over here, it'll come off this way and come behind the ear, just like this one is gearing up to do. It'll follow the back of the head. And then we'll come to a kind of a point at the back. And typically there's a little bit of a cowlick, so it's foot facing one direction, coming one way, and then it kind of curls going on the other side. I'm going to switch to a bigger brush so that I can get this hair pattern in without 10 million strokes. This is one of my bigger brushes that has a little more paint on it, and it puts a little more bigger strokes. But with it, I can, if the paint lasts longer on it, and it makes it so I can get the job done a little faster. I don't use this up by the head of the forehead because the strokes are too big. Oops, see? I don't want those to be too dark, so I'm going to just wipe off that big smear. And over here, it's going to split and go down and forward on one side and down to the left or right on the other side. So that's kind of the most important part of the head planning, right there where the hair shifts from one direction to the next. If you don't have a plan for that, then it doesn't look finished. It just looks like it's all going in one direction and it doesn't have a real game plan. It's kind of how her hair was to begin with. It was all just forward. And you won't see these underneath the hair. Well, you probably could see it under the hair if you were looking for it, but the hair itself will be the same color. So you really won't see it. It'll blend in. And this will tell you which direction the hair will need to be combed when it's done. Some of these are thicker than I normally put on, but I'm not really too worried about it because it's on the... gonna have a thick head of hair covering it up to make this little baby a newborn dark-haired baby. Okay, so there's the hair pattern across the back of the head. This will guide me as I paint the hair on, so that I know which direction to root the hair in. Compared to the back, the front is very thin and wispy. Pay attention to your eyebrows now that you're done, and make sure that if you're looking at it up front, that both sides are evenly in the middle, in the center, and in the outside edge. Make sure that they look even before you finish them. I'm going to study this for a second to make sure that I'm happy with it. See, this one to me looks a little more full, and this one has less strokes on it. So I'm going to come in here and just add a few more little hairs so they both look similarly full. Okay. And the hair is really, really dark, so if this part on the sides isn't dark enough, it doesn't actually blend in and match at all. It just is there. And back here is where my hair is actually going to stop. I'm not going to root my hair all the way down onto the forehead. I will probably stop it right into this range right here. And then the hair will lay down on the forehead after it's cut a little bit longer than it will be rooted farther down. She's going to be so cute when she's done. Doesn't even look like the same kit anymore. Strange. Just adding a little bit darker line here so that I know that this is where the hair needs to actually start and stop. Okay, the next part for this, I'm going to cook this baby with all this hair on, and then I'm going to come back and seal the hair on and seal the head, and then after that sealing step is done, I'm going to start rooting her. I'm going to see if I can find a way to get the camera in a position so that you can see some of the rootings. But I don't know if I'm going to be able to have 20 hours of rooting videos, so I'll just have to take small videos in between each little section so that you can watch it come to life. Rooting takes forever for a lot of people, but mono rooting, I don't know if I can really call it mono rooting. I root as fine as I can, but sometimes the hair is so thin that I do get a couple of hairs in, and I try not to, but it depends upon the hair. And I use tweezers to pluck out any multiples. So it's a process to get it to be perfected. And I want this baby's hair kind of thin right around the face. And then I'm going to try to make it kind of sticky-uppy in the back, like you see on a lot of little dark-haired babies. Okay, I think I'm satisfied. Mostly satisfied with this layer. If this baby hadn't been stripped to begin with and all these little pokes to begin with, it would be a lot more appealing looking right now without all these little poke holes and this whole ring of red underneath than it is right now. So hopefully you can kind of look past that and see the beauty in her despite her major hair scarring of her first life. Constantly trying to make sure both sides kind of match. Okay, I think I'm done. I've done enough for this one anyway. There you have it. One nearly finished nugget.